Jack. Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Now, we know that there's a number of trials going on lately with left-wing terrorism. We've seen this plot targeting UFC. We know that there was apparently a DACA recipient and legal alien who came here as a young child or came here at least as a minor, who has now been totally wrapped up in this. So that's something that we need to focus on. We know, of course, Tyler Robinson, his hearing will begin in about 2 weeks' time. But then Luigi Mangione. This is one of the biggest ones. And, of course, he's the one who's built the largest following out there in the world. Very interesting. He is now calling for not exactly the insanity plea, but something along the lines where we're called that he was under emotional distress or emotional disturbance. I want to get in with Jonathan Alpert because he is the author of Therapy Nation and someone who has deeply, deeply understood these situations. And of course, he's also in New York, so it affects him directly. Jonathan, how are you?
Good, Jack. Thanks for having me on. And you're right. I see all the Luigi lovers here in New York anytime he's brought to court. So it's quite striking to see them out there. And now you have to wonder what they'll think. He's emotionally disturbed. That's something that I've known for a long time. You've known, and most people with half a brain knew that it would take a deranged person to murder someone over a grievance.
Well, and so when we look at this idea of emotional disturbance, I kind of think of it as like similar to the crime of passion sort of thing. Like you catch your significant other in bed with with somebody else, and then you respond to that because of emotional disturbance. Is that what he's trying to claim here? Or is this something else?
Well, I'm no legal expert, but from what I understand, this spares him this will allow a manslaughter charge as opposed to anything else. We'll see how it plays out legally. But yeah, I think it's some people might see it as a crime of passion. Maybe they excuse that. But I think the bigger story is the people that have idolized Luigi Mangione, now what is it that they think? Does their thinking now change to something else now that they know, or at least the defense knows, that he's mentally ill and deeply disturbed, or do they remain fixated on him as a folk hero?
And so when we talk about this extreme emotional disturbance, and I'm looking at it again, we're told that some records that are going to be related to this are going to be released, that it's challenging, but and honestly, some people are pointing out that there's actually very strong, as we know, evidence tying him to, he's on camera. He's on camera. He's got a manifesto. He was found with a weapon on his person. So, the physical and forensic and the documentary evidence is quite strong here. And so him attempting this seems to be more like a legal ploy rather than him actually trying to point to direct emotional disturbance. But at the same time, isn't this the same thing that a lot of people have been doing in their personal lives? You see this new thing with like young workers where they say, "Oh, I need a mental health day." And they're demanding that mental health days be given to them and claiming that they have a mental health issue when really they don't. They're just kind of falling back on that because they know that's supposedly this unassailable shield that we're not actually able to judge in any way as it's been accepted now.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. We've seen accommodation culture run wild. It seems more evident in the young people in their 20s. They're not feeling well, so they know they can take a mental health day. They know their employer really won't fuss with that. I think the Luigi example is obviously much more extreme, but it has its roots in grievance culture, which I've talked about a lot on your show and other shows. where people feel wronged by society. They feel like they're owed something from society, or they hate the rich, they hate insurance companies. And we see it play out in various ways. We saw a couple of weeks ago this whole micro looting phenomenon that was all over the media, where people justified shoplifting from Whole Foods and other big corporations. So whether it's doing that or whether it's hating a health insurance company, it's all part of the same animal. My profession, therapists, are really into promoting this. They feel like their client is never wrong. It's always the world around them. So there needs to be a reckoning within my profession to try to make some changes with this.
Yeah, I gotta, and I just have to say, it seems like Luigi Mangione is just another Zoomer claiming a mental health day. We used to tell people that, hey, that's called get over it. Grab a coffee, grin and bear it, and let's get back to work. I can't even imagine having been in the military and this idea of accommodation. We have to accommodate everything, and they're even doing this in boot camp to a sense, where I'm told that in some branches, they're even starting to allow cell phones and, all these other things in boot camp, when the whole point of boot camp is that it's to stress test you, right? It's a stress test before you can enter the military, because it is that rite of passage. And the problem with accommodation culture is, for any of these things, it's justifying things that we used to not allow, that we used to have standards against, whether it's shucking work, whether it's going into the military, you want to have a high standard, or if you are, I don't know, thinking that it might be a good idea to shoot someone in the back on the street, that you don't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, if you go back to COVID, that's part of where this came from, work from home. And we're so many years past COVID now, yet people feel entitled to work from home. Even companies that have a policy of at office, I see people trying to get shortcuts. I've had people ask me for a note so that they can work from home. And of course, there's absolutely no justification for that, so I don't provide such a note. I don't know if it's laziness, if people are just highly anxious because they don't know how to function in our society anymore. 20-somethings have problems, and even older people have problems interacting with even a maitre d' at a restaurant. I started to see a lot of this around COVID and shortly after COVID, enter into the mixed technology. People are so used to being buried on their devices, they lose the skill or never develop the skill of interacting with a real human being. So we have profound problems in our society. Luigi Mangione is obviously a deeply disturbed human being, and hopefully he gets what he deserves, the punishment that he should get. And I think anyone that's looking up to him still as a folk hero really has to get their head examined. Here in New York, we now have a musical, a play about Luigi. You're showing it right there. I think it's absolutely crazy that people would celebrate a deeply disturbed criminal in this fashion.
No, and it's sick, but we have so many people now where you're combining all of these things that we know are sort of fads that we can track and that we can see. You, of course, have your piece out in the Wall Street Journal saying that therapy is a form of re-education. And I find this fascinating because it's tied to your book as well, where a lot of these things are coming out of the therapy world, actually.
Oh, yeah. And that Wall Street Journal piece, I thought of that idea because I received an email from a colleague where they listed, I think, about 15 different what are called social locators under their signature line. So their pronouns, of course, but then they listed middle class, white, this, that. I didn't even know what half them were. But instead of presenting themselves as a skilled clinician, they're putting out there these social identifiers. And then that translates into how they treat patients. They're hyper-focused on the color of a person, their sexual preference, instead of treating the actual mental health disorder. I've given examples in my book of patients who went into a therapist to try to get help managing their stress or anxiety, and they come out of the session feeling like they were made to feel like something was wrong with them because they're gay or because they're black or Asian. So therapists have just drifted so far from what they should be doing, which is helping people with mental health issues.
No, that's
Yeah,
exactly right. Jack Posobiec.
yeah.
We're coming up with a quick break here. So Jack Posobiec, we're on with psychotherapist Jonathan Alpert. I want to come right back because we're going to dig into a little bit about another case, other coast, the Los Angeles arsonist.
Call this the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Now, I wanted to dip in because we know that there's the LA arsonist, this Antifa arsonist who has been accused of setting the LA wildfire, or excuse me, the Palisades fires, that if convicted, Jonathan Rinderneck faces a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of 45 years in prisons. Federal case. Incredible piece here where one of his passengers, this Uber driver with grievances, said that someone said that he seemed like an incel, an involuntary celibate, was driving erratically, wouldn't stop talking about how humanity was crumbling, talking about how there aren't any good women in the region, violent with his words. There are, some of the most memorable issues. And in fact, this guy was obsessed with Luigi Mangione and many things. And in fact, Mangione's own lawyers had to put out a statement saying that, listen to this, Mr. Mangione does not support violent actions and does not condone past or future political violence. And so Luigi Mangione is distancing himself from the LA arsonist. You can't make this stuff up. We don't claim him. And what was interesting, though, is there's a behavioral analyst who was testifying that he believed that this individual, Jonathan Rinderneck, so this is the LA arsonist, was experiencing something called expressive motivation, which is not goal-oriented and typically satisfies some need for the offender that only they can explain. Expressive motivation, which of course was then based in this grievance culture. I want to bring Jonathan Alpert back in. So Jonathan, when they're talking about expressive motivation, what does that mean? Does that mean that this is sort of an urge that they can't control, that has to come out through some sort of action? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, Jack, honestly, that sounds like a lot of psychobabble to me, and people just don't want to acknowledge that this guy was disturbed. He was a incel. Obviously, he couldn't connect with women. He hated society. I mean, if you're inspired by someone like Luigi Mangione, then you've got some serious problems there. I mean, if you have trouble with women or dating, like, go speak to someone, get help, learn how to gain confidence, overcome your anxiety. I help people with that all the time. And to now see Luigi Mangione be this voice of moral reasoning is laughable, and maybe he should have thought about that before he gunned down the CEO.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, the fact that he's, of course, trying to distance himself just adds to the hypocrisy here and adds to the dynamic. But when they're looking at it, they're also saying that there's some of these actions when people who fall into these patterns, I suppose, exhibit where he was, there was some girl who didn't want to go out with him on New Year's Eve or broke their plan. So he's taking another phone, like a burner phone, and he's texting her from that phone and messing with her and trying to get back at her. And he kept this litany of grievances. And it just seems as though this is someone who, again, it has these delusions of grandeur. Oh, the whole world is against me. And rather than do anything to change himself, he wants to go and wage war against the entire world.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we saw with Mangione. He had great grievances against the health insurance industry, and he felt like it was doing harm to society, and he just couldn't find a way to handle it other than the heinous act that he carried out. So there are parallels, and I think the people who are praising Mangione have to realize that there are consequences of this, because there could be someone like this arsonist in California that hears about Luigi and feels inspired and feels like he too can take action and can, take revenge on society in the way that he did, which literally killed people and ruined California, a large part of it. So I think people need to be far more responsible. We see it playing out with how people talk about the president as well. Calling him Hitler, saying he's going to ruin democracy. I mean, it's all part of the same animal, and people really need to be careful about what they're saying, because this rhetoric, this language getting into the wrong head can have destructive consequences.
Well, it clearly does. And, here it becomes this idea that I'm going to teach them a lesson and I'm going to, come out at them. And unfortunately, I worry, though, that the problem is that these individuals are going to spread, that this contagion is going to exhibit more and more activity. Look, go through the list all the time, but we said at the top, this individual, Luigi Mangione, the cases are working through at the same time. Tyler Robinson, obviously another example of political violence, murdering Charlie Kirk, out of this idea that he was defending his trans lover, who, by the way, is set to testify against him and was given immunity recently, all the way up to the 3 assassination attempts on President Trump, including one, this guy was a Caltech adjunct, and this latest of the UFC attackers, who apparently there's a huge manhunt out because there was a whole cell of 23 individuals who were going to attack the UFC event, which, oh, by the way, I was at with my wife. And so when we look at all of these, when we put it all together, when we try to understand what's happening in our country, you've got this incredible roadmap that explains that the psychology is what ties all these together.
Yeah, and there's also, as you mentioned, a social contagion element to this, where, I mean, we see this spreading online like everywhere, and people just feel inspired to take action. The plans that were thankfully thwarted on the White House there, I mean, the mother, from what I understand, saw something that was a little suspicious. She turned it over to the FBI, thankfully. And, people just think that it's their right, it's their moral right to take action just because they don't like someone. I don't know about you, but I was taught when you have differences with someone, you talk them out. Not everyone has to think the same way as you. Try to accept people for who they are, meet in the middle. But that lesson seems to be missing now, where people are just so evil. And again, not to harp on this, but when we have politicians, people in the media who feel that it's okay to put out rhetoric, Trump is evil, Trump is Hitler, the health insurance industry kills people. This gets into the wrong people, and we're gonna see more of this. We're gonna see people feeling that it's their right to carry out heinous acts, to avenge such things, and to try to, in their mind, make things that are wrong right.
Yeah, or you have these leftists going up on the New York Times and talking about, Brian Thompson was guilty of social murder, and therefore, since that was social murder, a response to him is actually self-defense, because you're in defense of others, because you're defending others from being socially murdered by the consequences of his healthcare policy. I mean, they're playing so fast and loose with morality. They're playing fast and loose with these ideas of murder, of culpability, of personal responsibility, and they're doing so to justify some of the most heinous actions that can possibly be taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a huge difference between social murder and actual murder. But even with Luigi Mangione, like, his big gripe was that insurance companies kill people. So the very thing that he was concerned about, he went ahead and did. It just makes absolutely no sense to a sane person. So I'm glad that the defense has finally recognized how deeply emotionally disturbed he is.
We will see. We'll see how it goes. Jonathan Alpert, where can people go to follow you?
People can see me on X at Jonathan Alpert, as well as Instagram at Jonathan Alpert.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.